California just made it easier for the predator and harder for parents to protect and save their children. They call it progress, but I call it your typical freak, nasty, diddy crap perversion wrapped up in public policy. Governor Gavin Newsom and the Democrats, they've been up to a lot lately. But they've quietly pushed a set of laws that decriminalize sex trafficking zones, allows strangers to act as caregivers, and then seal your children's identity and keeping it away from you, the parent. If you don't live in California and you think that this is not going to affect you, you've got another thing coming. This is coming to a state near you, and I need to explain to you exactly what this is and what it all means so that you can know how to move differently. So let's get into this. Grace and peace, you guys. Welcome back to Unshakable with April Chapman, where we discuss all things social, cultural, political, and theological from a biblical perspective. I'm your host, April Chapman, and welcome to today's show. On today's show, we're going to be exposing what California Governor Gavin Newsom, freak nasty Newsom is what I call him, what him and his Democrat colleagues have been up to. Y'all, this is absolutely horrible. However, when it comes to Democrats at this point, nothing shocks me anymore. Now, you guys know how I'm always referring to Democrats as the party of slavery. Well, I do so because it's true. It was true about the Democrats of yesteryear, and it is still true now. So there are these new sets of laws that have been repealed and adjusted and completely changed that are so egregious to children that I need to let you, my listening audience, know about it. These laws, they endanger children, but what's worse than that is that it strips parents of their legal rights, the rights that the Lord, the good Lord, has given you to shepherd and to be in charge of your children, to protect them and to provide to them and to give them a good life. These laws stand in the way of that. So what we're going to talk about what happened, why it matters to every mom and dad in America, and how with the recent passing of Prop 50, how this just makes everything, it just takes everything to a whole nother level. So what I want to do is I want to show you how the Democrats have implemented a new street law for decriminalizing loitering as it relates to prostitution. You're like, well, why would anyone decriminalize loitering as it relates to prostitution? Well, let me go ahead and give you some backstory. Back in 2022, California passed a law called SB 357. This law repealed the rule that allowed police to intervene and to stop someone who was loitering for prostitution. So basically, this is where you might see a young girl, she's standing around more often than not, giving context clues based on how she is dressed and kind of how she's moving, that she is there for the purposes of solicitation. But in the case of this law, if you would see a young girl hanging around, not waiting for a bus, not doing anything, the police could intervene and actually stop the possible transaction from taking place and saving a lot of young girls from danger. Well, the Democrats, these perverted jokers, they claimed that, oh, well, no, we've got to repeal this law because, you see, we've got to stop racial profiling. So in the name of racial profiling, they have basically handcuffed the police and removed them or the responsibility from them to intervene when they see something and trying to circumvent the problem. Here's the reality. When you see a young girl out loitering and if she's dressed in very revealing clothes, I hate to say this, but usually it's because baby girl is out there selling box. Right? Like, track with me. I understand this is a family-friendly show, but I have to speak plain and help you understand what this is about. I have 2 young girls. And so I want my audience to understand and to be aware of what is happening.
And this morning, the chiefs of police for San Diego and for National City calling for the state to repeal a new law which decriminalized loitering for sex work.
According to the chiefs, SB 357 makes it harder for officers to arrest people for human trafficking. But supporters of the law say it helps reduce harassment and discrimination against certain communities. San Diego Police Chief David Nislight joining us now to discuss more on this. Chief, thanks so much for coming in. Really appreciate your time. We know that your department was part of this recent sting that led to the arrests of 48 people. Senate Bill 357, though, this was authored by Senator Scott Wiener, who said the previous loitering law resulted in, quote, disproportionate criminalization of trans, black, and brown women and perpetuates violence towards sex workers. Your response to this, and tell us how has this impacted your officers' abilities to investigate sex trafficking?
Well, the bill, well-intentioned, but here's what we're seeing out here. What we're seeing is you have the sex workers out there, a lot of them out there being trafficked against their will. Our way of rescuing somebody is to have that initial contact, to have an officer go up and say, hey, what puts you out on the street? It's 2 o'clock in the morning. We find out a lot of these people are juveniles, they're runaways, they're in a very bad relationship, they're being forced into this business. When this bill was enacted, it took away that ability to contact that. But also, talking about the disparities, there's other ways to look at that and see if you can minimize that disparity. Mm-hmm. But again, how many more victims do we need to have? We rescued a 13-year-old girl. There's no way in heck that she wanted to be out there. She's being trafficked. And so, I've been doing this now for 35 years, and this is getting worse. And this was a very predictable and foreseeable consequence of this bill. Also, this is being complaint-driven. Could you imagine living in this area or having a business in this area? So let's look at this from a balanced perspective of looking at it from the perspective of the person being trafficked, look at it from the perspective of the people that work and live in that area. I mean, it became an open air sex market, as the district attorney talked about, and I've been out there multiple times on duty, and it's just the nonstop drivers, and then the workers are out there, much like the video shows.
Yeah, I know this was all part of the operation that you were on. Many law enforcement agencies taking part in this, arresting about 50 people.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, a lot of the victims, these are victims who are being sex trafficked. I mean, you mentioned a 13-year-old. I remember mentioning a pregnant person who was out there. Transgender people, foster kids, become used by these traffickers.
Yes.
Before this new legislation, if a police officer saw that kind of loitering, they would easily intervene. And usually this is when the young girl would give some sort of signal to let the police know, I am in danger. I am in distress. She might whisper. She might blink. She might flat out say, help me. But now with this new law, let me tell you what happens now. With the new law that's been passed, police officers cannot intervene until they actually see a transaction. So that means police need a clear indication that a pervert has actually exchanged money in order to engage inappropriately with one of these young girls, which means the traffickers and the pimps, they're now free to advertise young girls in plain sight, and there's nothing that the police can do about it. This is crazy that this is happening. And you guys, it is so bad now that Los Angeles police officers, they have called Figueroa Street the new kiddie stroll. They're calling it the kiddie stroll because that's where 12 and 13-year-old girls are openly trafficked, and law enforcement cannot touch them until it is too late. They can't even intervene. In plain terms, California has handcuffed the police, and they've unleashed the predators. And now do you see why I keep saying that these people are evil? Do you understand now why I keep calling the Democrats the Diddy-crats? Do you see why I get outraged knowing that there are so-called Christians out here giving this party their vote, voting blue no matter who, when this is the type of legislation that state lawmakers are passing, and they want you to believe that they care about you and your children? No, they do not care about you and your children. They actually want to make sure that it is easier for your children to be for predators to find your children, and for your children to be exploited All because I had reason to believe there's another reason why, before I get into the new law, why this is the case. If you don't think that the open border was beneficial for Democrats, yes, it is about elections, but it's more than that. It's the money that is involved, the money that is coming from the cartels who pay attorneys, who have lobbyists in DC to make sure that legislation like this gets passed to make it easier for the sex trafficking game to continue. It is so diabolical. But let me go ahead and share with you this other law. There's another law that we need to talk about.
John Doe takes possession of the child. He goes away. The school, when mom and dad show up to the school to pick up the child, the school is under no obligation to tell even the parents the name of the individual that filled out the affidavit. This is unheard of in America. It's been unheard of in California.
Controversy is brewing over a new California bill designed to protect children whose parents face immigration detention. The bill, AB 495, would let parents pick a temporary guardian for their children. This guardian could even be someone who isn't a relative. They could enroll the child in school. They could make medical decisions. The bill says parents' wishes should be followed, but caregivers acting in good faith are protected from liability, even if they don't know the parents' wishes. Some parental rights groups are not happy. Pastor Jack Hibbs calls the bill dangerous. He says it has loopholes that could be abused. The California Family Council also has concerns, but supporters say the bill is crucial. The Alliance for Children's Rights says it helps families in crisis. The bill is now headed to a Senate committee, so the debate is just getting started.
Now, this law essentially gives strangers, complete strangers, power over your children. So AB 495 is a law that on paper, it says that a trusted adult can handle school forms or health paperwork when parents are not around. Well, you might be asking, what could possibly go wrong with a law like that? How could a law like that possibly be used for nefarious intent? Well, if you're asking yourself that, it's because you don't know Democrats very well. Here is the problem. And here is precisely why I keep saying to keep your kids away from these darn Democrats. This law is a law that in practice is created for it to be abused. You have non-parent people who are not legal guardians who have now been given the power to enroll your kids in school or to take them to certain medical appointments or to basically act in your behalf, a proxy, simply by filling out appropriate paperwork. Now, riddle me this, Batman. What could possibly go wrong with a law like that? Well, when you combine AB 495 with California's sanctuary laws, the sanctuary laws that they have in place for gender and abortion services, put all of those laws together, and now you've built a loophole that is big enough to hide a child from their actual parents. So if your daughter is inadvertently taken to California and someone claims that she is there for health services, you may never see or hear from her again. Wait a minute, I'm not done. There's another law that when you add it on top of that really is the diabolical linchpin as to why people need to stop supporting this party. Let's examine this other law, the secrecy law. This is the law where they seal the entire paper trail. So AB 223 and SB 59 are two laws that allow minors and now adults change their name or gender markers in secret where nobody has to know, right? Like they can do it and parents don't even have to be notified ever. So what does this look like in practice? Well, courts now seal the records, meaning your child's gender marker or name has been changed. And because the court has sealed the record, you can't even find out if, when, or how it's even happened. So if a trafficker or an activist takes your child to California, and then files the appropriate paperwork, that paper trail is hidden from you, the parent. Tell me this is not diabolical. Tell me this is not a concerted effort to traffic children and to usher them straight into the sex slave trafficking trade. I told y'all, Democrats are nothing more than a bunch of evil, demented masters looking for slaves of any type. It's not even about ethnicity anymore. They want to subjugate and exploit anybody who they can find. This is not safety. This is state-sponsored secrecy and perversion happening right before our very eyes. Guys, when I listened and looked at all of this legislation, and when you put it all together, it made me outraged. And it should outrage you too, because if you think about it, let's say your child gets to California. They fill out the appropriate paperwork, change her name, you start tricking her, putting her on the strip. The loitering law that's in place now, she's trying to get the police's attention, and she's trying to figure out, why won't they help me? And it's because unless the transaction is taking place, the police can't intervene, because it's racial profiling, right? It's racial profiling to walk up to a young black girl who looked like she's tricking to be like, baby girl, are you okay? Who are you here with? Is everything all right? So you have that, and then you got our pimp. He's already filled out the appropriate paperwork to act on your behalf as the proxy. And then the secrecy law allows all of the record keeping to be sealed and kept away from you, so you can't even find where your child went. This has enraged me on so many levels. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that this video reaches as many people as possible, because y'all, Prop 50 has just passed. Proposition 50 has just passed. And so now they have rigged the whole system on so many levels that legislative lies and deviancy like this can pass. And now when you look at the gerrymandering and the redistricting game that the Democrats have been playing, they are now going to be able to push all kinds of stuff like this, and then be able to use the redistricting and the gerrymandering to stay in power, so that there's nothing you can even do about it. What do I mean by that? While all of these other laws are on the back burner cooking, they just simmering. You didn't know about it, but they exist. The media doesn't tell you about any of them, but now Gavin Newsom and the Democrats have pushed Proposition 50. And what that does is it temporarily throws out where California used to have an independent redistricting system that the voters approved, that this system keeps things fair. Now with Proposition 50, all of that is out the window. Basically, the Democrats have drawn their own, or will be drawing their own districts, so that they can lock in their control until at least the year 2030. In other words, y'all, they broke the referee so that they can keep cheating in peace. I'm telling you, keep your kids away from these Democrats. Hold on to your babies, because the last thing you need right now is for something to happen, they get snatched up. Somebody takes them over to California, and you'll never find them or see from them again. Why does this matter to you? You're like, I don't live in California. April, I live in Texas or Georgia or Florida. I just told you, California is the test lab for left-wing policy. What happens there spreads everywhere else. So when the government can override parents, when they will allow court records to be sealed, and when they start protecting traffickers under the name of equity, no child in America is safe. And so when politicians rig their own districts, they can't even be voted out for the foolishness that they want to pass. It is the ultimate power grab. And it's being used to usher in their wicked agenda. And this should terrify every American under the sound of my voice. You guys, this is not even about politics anymore. This is about good and evil, about truth and deception, light and darkness. I mean, I don't know how much more plain that I can make this for you. If you are a Christian, you should understand that this is more than just bad policy. This is spiritual warfare. If Jesus himself can say, whoever causes one of these little ones to stumble, it'd be better for him to have a millstone tied around his neck and to be thrown into the sea. The enemy has always targeted children because he knows if you can destroy the innocents, you can destroy any semblance of hope. But God has called parents to train up their children in the way that they should go. It is our job to protect our own children, which means you can't outsource parenting to the state, and you cannot give the state more power over your children than you have over your children. So here's what I want to do. I want to leave you guys with some practical things that we can do to fight back. First of all, you got to stay informed. Shows like this are important, but I cannot do it by myself. Don't trust the headlines. You need to read these bills. You need to think for yourself. I'm going to link each of them in the description box below. Number 2, you've got to get involved locally. You need to be asking your school board some very hard questions. You need to ask them what rules are in place that allow non-parents to make decisions about your children. You will never know unless you ask, because they are passing a lot of these bills very quietly. Very quietly. Number 3, you need to support real anti-trafficking groups. There are a lot of them out there, but you need to find the ones that are actually rescuing children. You need to hear the testimonies. You need to see the stories and the evidence, because it is difficult to trust anything that a lot of people are saying these days. Number 4, you need to vote differently. If you vote for a Democrat, this is what you're voting for. You may say, well, nah, I don't support this, and this is evil. If you vote for a Democrat, this is what you're supporting. You're supporting this. These are the laws that are written by Democrats who you keep electing. And so the only way to stop this is to change who writes the laws. Share this video, because awareness is the first step toward accountability. So this was not good news to report and present, but I felt that it was necessary to keep you guys informed. But I am curious to know, what do you guys think? Did hearing about this make your blood boil? Because it certainly did that for me. And if it did, that is a good thing. That means at least your moral compass still works and that your conscience is not seared. California may be ground zero, but it doesn't have to be the blueprint. Only you can change that. We can stand firm and walk in our convictions, carrying it with courage, but we can't sit back and let this happen. But if you found this breakdown helpful, I'm just asking for you to hit the like button, leave me a comment, let me know what you think. Share this episode with another parent. Do the babies not matter? Do the Black lives really matter? All lives really matter. So until next time, you guys, stand firm, stay bold, and above all else, stay unshakable. Grace and peace.